Welcome to a special episode in which I'm going to talk about game design. And I know probably all this I've touched on at least sometime before, but it just sort of come up in a discussion that's been sort of ongoing or started back up on the Black Ice forums. And so if you were looking for an episode of Hearts of Iron in which you're going to see gameplay and advancing and crushing the Soviets, this is not going to be it. You can skip it. If you want to find out my thinkings on the mod that I create, Third Reich Events, and whether you think it's reasonable what I'm doing or whatnot, and you can post your comment if you want to, watch this and post your comments below. Love to have your feedback, because maybe I'm all wrong, but at least I want to try to present what's in my head and why I do things the way I do it. Okay, like I was saying at the end of the last episode, I am a game designer. All modders, well, theoretically all modders are game designers, but as I sort of use an example, if all you're really doing is modding, a counter, changing the motor torpedo boat counter to something better, yeah, that is a little bit of, game aesthetic design, but we're talking about functionality. So Third Reich Events has a lot of events, a huge amount of events that affect the game. I mean, they're not just eye candy. They're not just stop attacking across them. That might be a benefit. So they affect the game and in significant ways. So it is game design. Now, the game I'm working on obviously is Hearts of Iron, but is a game that looks back at history and tries to replicate a supremely complex situation. You got politics, industry, military tactics, as in tactics of how do these guys get across this river? They should probably stop attacking there because they're not going across that river well. You're okay. You counterattack there. Stop them from attacking so we can get across it. Well, the tactics of river crossing to the sort of strategies of Northern Front, Southern Front. Yes, Aurora, that is really nice. It helps me because I do not, I know of the Dnieper. I know it's in here, but following just what is the Dnieper here is difficult for me. Yeah, I got the Mississippi main line down, and it's not even marked on this because no one plays much on the U.S. map, of actually doing it. But this, for someone who talks about playing, having the Don marked on here and we're crossing the Don or something really helps. Good game design. And I've talked to Podcat, the designer of one of the major designers of Hearts of Iron 4, and he liked the idea, though I don't know they've implemented river names for Hearts of Iron 4. And I definitely told him about this, of how they've done it in Hearts of Iron 3. But so yeah, game design. So we're, complex set of situations. And one in which we want to, because this is a grand strategy, not just a strategy game, a grand strategy game, we want to play in significant what ifs in history. Now I want to play in realistic, personally want to play in realistic what ifs, but not like, well, what if America turns fascists and allies with the Nazis? I'm not really interested in that. I mean, not that I'll never play a mod that does that, but it's got to be sort of like a Kaiser Reich. I keep bringing that up because it is, as I call it, the wacky world of Kaiser Reich or whatever. They've sort of created this whole fantasy milieu, put it together, and it's sort of cool if you want to go and experiment. But I don't like just sort of half-assery workings on, like we'll press these few buttons and have the U.S. go fascist or something. I want a whole reason why the world's different. Like good alternative fiction kind of thing or alternative reality stuff. But okay. So, and a good strategy game would be like War in the East or War in the East 2, in which it really tries to look at the actual German resources committed to the Eastern Front at a particular time, and then sort of extrapolates from there. Now, you may not take all of the losses that you take. I've not gotten so about reinforcement. What the hell is it? Yeah, this is about that exertion and other things. The how well Warren, because I haven't gotten deep enough into it, deals with things like the Stalingrad disaster and the rebuilding of divisions after the Stalingrad disaster. How does it handle if you don't have a Stalingrad disaster, shall we say, and divisions aren't destroyed? And yeah, I know it does tanks and whatnot. And does it create fictitious divisions that represent, units that would have been created because there were units that were in essence sort of in the creation process that sort of get renamed and added the sort of at-home depot elements to it no, that division wasn't destroyed in Stalingrad. See, here it all is with all new people that just happen to be all new, basically. So it's complex. We are never going to be, at least in my opinion, 100% right on any of this thing if we're looking at this as a grand strategy. We can look at like, oh, well, what was the, particular tactical level battles somewhere in history, and it's a short enough micro period of time that we can figure things out, and it'll be fairly historically accurate, where there's enough information. This company attacks that company on this ridge, and we have all of the period, flyover photos like you can do, which is actually rather well done, is Steel Division, where they look at, Normandy, and they have all those period aerial reconnaissance photos to build their maps up, and they have the orders of battle pretty well down with their TOEs, the equipment that was actually in these units, and so it's very historical. You can do that, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about this grand strategy game. And I know from my readings. Now I'm maybe all wrong from my other readings that I've done, but I know from my readings that, well, what I know is that like Germany in 1938 ordered 120 Panzer IIs from the Panzer II manufacturer, whether it's Krupp or whoever, it doesn't matter at the moment. And so the company there makes 120 of them by the deadline that's set. We're talking about in 1938. The German government never told them to, and even they did later in the war to some degree, and we could go into that, but never told them to turn on that factory and start producing Panzer IIs at the, 8-hour work shifts, at normal sort of work shifts, and just produce as many as you can for as long as you can. Just start producing them. No, they said, we want 120 of them, and we want them in, 180 days. All of them done. And the company goes, fine, and they do it. And they gear up and make those 120. They don't keep producing like road wheels. They don't keep producing replacement parts. I mean, they may have orders for additional replacement parts. I think if you looked at the contracts, and I have not, you will find things like, oh yeah, replacement parts and whatever else. But it's a finite order that is done, and the factory fulfills them. Okay. So when we look back today on it, we go, well, how many tanks did Germany produce in 1938? Oh, okay, that's the baseline. So how many? And then we also figure out aircraft and all these other things. Well, Germany should have 300 ICs in 1938 to produce all this stuff. Okay, but that isn't reality. Because I've known this more in the tank production realm, but we have lots of, when I say we have missing gaps, I think some of it is purely missing the evidence, the documentation is just gone, destroyed in the war, shall we say, from whatever means. Some of it's just gone. Others, it exists, but it's in some file in either a corporate, in Krupp's corporate archives or in some government archive somewhere, or maybe lost in a salt mine somewhere that we may dig up someday. But let's just stick to archives, that they may be in some Russian archive or some American archive that no one's published in a book. I mean, they may exist and they may not be hidden or anything like that. They just may be sitting in some archive. Just no one's gone in and looked. And no, not being hidden. I'm not talking about nefarious things here. Just there's a lot of information we, as the general reading historically public, doesn't have access to unless we, get and go into, various archives. And obviously you got to be able to read the language, not just read German. You got to know German back then, which has changed. And there was different Germans, written languages within Germany. And the Nazis are the main people. I gotta write. There's like 4 or 5 terms I should write down so I can pronounce. Gleichenschaft, I don't know. Basically, sort of means standardization. They were standardizing German, and which is more or less the standard written German that ends up being what's used today, is done during the Nazi period. So you have to understand what a lot of the abbreviations meant to them and all this stuff. So I know, I'm saying, or maybe I should say believe, but more or less know, that in 1937 or 1938, the German government could have gone to somebody and said, one of the tank manufacturers, okay, you got this big tank manufacturing plant here, not just an assembly floor, but, the machine tools, the stamping tools, the forging elements, the casting elements, all of the stuff to make, panzers. You got all this stuff here? Okay. Right next to it, in the field next to this factory, build another one of these factories. So it's not necessarily like a whole new factory, but it's like duplicate your capabilities next door. And if the German government was going to order this to be done, as in, request it to be done, and pay for it to be done, the German, the factory could readily do this. And I know they could do it without significantly disrupting, please note my words, significantly disrupting other current production of aircraft, of tanks, of machine guns, helmets, belt buckles. They could expand another tank factory because they're going to the machine tool makers and say, make us another set of these tools, these, this, that, and the other thing, get all this factory built up, get the bricklayers in to make the bricks for the buildings, the steel frame people for the big internal cranes, and all that stuff, and get all of it made. Okay, and it may take 2 years to build this factory. I know they could have done that. Now, how long would it have taken to them? But I don't know how many factories, if you say do this for tanks, aircraft, trucks, because they were doing this for all this stuff. You have I think what some of this represents here is the Volkswagen factory that's being built that ends up producing almost no Volkswagens, but huge numbers of Kubelwagens, the German Jeeps. So if they had planned better, and this is not in a wacky what if world, this is just going like, hey, yeah, going to some of the manufacturers, we know they could increase the number of ICs to some degree that would not massively upset the system. I love TIK's videos. Don't watch all of them, but watch many of them. He deals very, very well with the information that he gets on hand from a lot of the sources I'm talking about from, other authors. Not that he, to the best of my knowledge, and not a knock on him, but he is not doing original source research somewhere. He's just reading what has been published or translated into English, like the Goebbels diaries translated into English and whatnot. And more of that, the problem with that is you have to rely upon the correct translation, the correct understanding of the words used and how they're translated into modern English. But I don't always agree with his conclusions. Now, that's fine, and this is again not a slam on him or I'm against him. I generally agree with a lot of them, but not all of them. And I really very much understand that you could expand when you build guns and rifles that aren't sold. They are you cause economic problems because they're not a usual. You're not building toasters and selling toasters, so then the workers get to go out and buy the toasters that they make in their factories. They're building Panzers and they don't get to buy them, and they're just you're putting money into the system, and you're getting back nothing of economic value in a economic sense. It is valuable in an economic sense that it protect it. If you're not going for a world war, if you're not playing World Wars version 2, what can we conquer? You're just doing, hey, can we, maintain a good stable country by having proper defenses, which means you have a good stable economy. Yeah, there is an economic benefit to building military weapons, so long as humans are humans and we are organized into nation states. Yes, I know people want or fear the one world government, but until we truly have a one world government, we need militaries. And so a certain level of military spending is an economic benefit directly because it creates stability. But if you're going to play World War in the actual real sense, it may not be good. So we know that Germany could have expanded their production numbers, like I say, turn on producing Panzer IIs or Panzer Is in the early days. And the reason those are useful is well, you have more Panzer divisions, more people trained up, and those vehicles get converted into Martyrs and Jagdpanzers and whatnot down the road, so they have continuing use. But we know they could have produced more, and we know they could have expanded production prior to the war. They did expand some production prior to the war, but we know that Germany was very much like, well, we don't want to waste our expenditures on Panzer IIs because this model of Panzer IIs because we want 120 of them to drive around and see how we like them, and then we'll order changes to it, and then we'll get another 120 and see how those work out. They were very much still in the experimental stages with the war is way because they were planning for a war way down the road. And so they, didn't. Now, maybe you want to play, and that's absolutely fine. And that's why you have start dates, not in Black Ice currently, but in Hearts of Iron, start dates of 1939. You're starting with what they had. And you're not retconning, you're not like, oh, well, what if Germany had an extra 3 Panzer divisions fully equipped at the start of World War II? And what if they had motorized 4 more infantry divisions at the start of World War II? Well, if you're not interested in those type of things, just start at the start of the war dates. And that's cool. But if you're starting in a 36 start date, other than just watching the time clock go by, there's no point on playing that earlier start date if you're not planning at the base level of altering whatever country you're working on in my again what I consider a realistic direction. So build 4-engine bomber planes for Germany or something like. They could have done it. They had them. A few of them. They could have built a bunch more. And would they have been any good and would they have been useful? That's another question. But they could have done it. I agree with you, you should move towards one world government, but that would be several hundred years into the future before it would benefit. Okay, well, the problem, and I won't get into too much, one world government, different cultures like to be governed differently, okay? So to have a one world government spiraling, you need to have an agreed upon culture. And so we can do World War III. Germany's going to conquer the world and they're going to give us the German government. But this time it's going to be the good German government, the Merkel-style German government. And we're all going to like it because it's all going to be a good Republic of Federal Republic of Germany of the world. And it's all going to be great. Or it's all going to be the American government and it's all going to be great. And you can't have a monarchy because, I don't mean like a fictitious monarchy like, I don't know, Denmark, in which, you have a king, but who cares? I mean, an actual monarchy like Saudi Arabia or Bhutan or whatever, the actual governing monarchy. You can't have that because you're all one world government. And fuck you because your culture says there should be a king, or your culture says, no, the religious people should rule our country. So, I don't want religious ruling my country, but some people do. And so until you get one culture in this world, and the only way that I see that that's going to happen is by conquest. So one world government is also, I think, is good for humanity to have different cultures, not necessarily that are going to conflict with each other, meaning that they're going to need to fight over the borders of their territories. And now the problem is, of course, is if there's a population boom in Italy and they need more, and in, Croatia or whatever we want to say over here, they actually, every generation just has one kid per couple, and so they're going down and down and down. There's hardly anybody living in Croatia, but Croatians like having being able to have a huge lot of property around them with nobody, no neighbors nearby, and they like that. But the Italians are all crammed in apartments and they need more Lebensraum, so they're going to go in and conquer this other people that aren't using their territories right. So you will have border conflicts, but even if you didn't have border conflicts, still the different cultures produce different things, whether it's like different foods, but just also different governing ideas to think about. Well, does this work? Or different educational paths and systems. So to have multiple cultures interacting with each other, it is, I think, a benefit to humanity. Yes, it can also be a great detriment. World wars can break out to humanity, but I don't know on the whole whether one world government or whether it's achieved peacefully or by the jackboot, one world government, 30 generations after it's achieved, is going to be better for humanity than multi-governments that periodically, now nuclear warfare, other than a couple of bombs dropped, but, mass nuclear warfare, that's going to be super bad. But if it stays away from mass super nuclear war and just sort of continues normal war, 20 or 30 generations down the road, maybe we would be better off with that as humanity versus one world government. I know we're getting off topic. We need to colonize Moon, Mars, and any other planets we have. No, if you just do that, if there are aliens, now an outside threat, different sausages, exactly. Exertion. An outside threat may very well be a unifying factor to humanity, and we can see what that's going to go on. But okay, back to the game and modding special and my thoughts. So that we are looking at, with the 36 start date is, and it's really key, is to when conscription has been entered into in Germany, which I think is late 35, but maybe early 36, actually official conscription. But it's really based a lot of it around remilitarizing the Rhineland. And it's sort of a key moment, and a lot of things go on from there. And that is really the set path that the Nazis are pushing towards war. And we know the Nazis and Hitler is very aware that their actions may lead to war. He gives specific, my understanding, again, it's just I get from documentaries. I didn't read the actual memos or orders, but my understanding is the orders that if they meet any French resistance, they're to immediately stop, and if there's pushback, to leave the Rhineland, not to actually go to war over the Rhineland, militarization of the Rhineland. They had already gotten rid of in 1935 the last of the sort of Saarland occupation by the French, but it's 1936 is the remilitarization of the Rhineland. He gives orders to withdraw, not to fight a war. But that's obviously what we're doing could cause a war, but please don't if you can keep it from happening. We just think they're bluffing on the war thingy. It's what he thinks they're doing. Why do I have a big stack of Oh, these are left over, right? Sorry for the off topic. Yeah, I'm spiraling, as you know, I love talking about these things, and we will and I will talk happily about it some other time when I'm not trying to make a special on this. Why I think things are good or bad. And it's again why I think so, and you can think opposite, and we can both be friends so long as you're not actually wanting to put your jackboot on my neck and force me into your vision of whatever. But as opposed to just talking intellectually as what we think would be good, that's a different matter. We can do that and be friends. Okay, so we already know the German. We're already sort of on the understanding in 1936 that Germany is preparing for war. And so I'm looking at modding and game development as how to do this. Now, if we make building tank factories and aircraft factories, and I'm just using tanks as specific so I know some of the details better there, but all these different factories for free, well, they just spam out huge numbers unrealistically. If, on the other hand, we limit their production of factories to simple events, well, we're constrained to maybe actual historical events, because they did do like the Nibelungen Works and a few others, and I don't know all of them. They actually, building new factories that we know about, and or significantly expanding, which may technically be a new factory, but it's part of the greater complex. But expanding factories already in existence, that's constraining it on the other side. And then what's the point of starting earlier? So we want to do that, or do we just allow? And this is, I think, oh my God sort of position, is just allow what the game mechanics would allow for expansion of factories, which are ICs. And if you give an event that expands the ICs, it has to have maybe not equal, but significantly similar costs to what it would do within game mechanic. Now, again, I'm not saying he's a purist on that, but he definitely seems to veer more on that side of the equation than on the other. Okay, now my position is, and what I do for TRE is I look at history. I try to find events in history. And I try to then give choices. And yes, the choices sometimes are clearly, well, why wouldn't you? And like one of them, very, very early on an event that I made, dealing with now this is partially just sort of a cool thing, but a Mercedes staff car. I think it's the G35 or something. It's the big staff car, cool staff car that had, 3 axles, 3 wheels per side, 6 wheels. That Mercedes built some. I wanted to interest the Army into, well, would you want a huge fleet of these really cool staff cars? They're nice, shiny. Well, we can do them in field gray, or we can do them in nice, shiny colors, or whatever you want it, however you want them painted, and they're really cool. I just know, the one was used in Hogan's Heroes, the TV series I watched growing up. Yes, the USSR collapsing. The big reason the US is eating itself right now. Yeah, Vincent. Hello, Vincent. It's been a while. That's very much part of it. And they haven't recognized the threat that China is that needs to unify. Internal politics, both on the left and the right, though those that want to make changes are on the left. That's just how the left is. So they're the most irritating to people who don't want changes. See, the biggest threats are internal to their agendas and goals, meaning being blocked by the opposition party, and not the biggest threat of foreign conflict. So we don't care about what the foreigners are doing. We only care about what our opposition internally is doing. And so, yeah, that's part of it. You're absolutely right. So back to the Mercedes. So these really cool. And the Army takes a look at them and goes, damn, those are expensive. Cool, but expensive. No, thank you. Okay, and that's what happens. Now, they make 24 of these or something, some small number. One is given to Franco as, a diplomatic gift, and it still exists. It's been unrestored. It's still in more or less perfect condition. It's used very minimally. It's currently owned by the King of Spain. More as, I think, in trust of the people as opposed to his personal car. It's in a museum. But and there's a few of them still existed, and a few did end up in the German army. I think Hitler gets a couple of them. There's very few of them made. So I sort of took that as a what if. What if the army decided to order a bunch of these staff cars? Well, what if? And not just like 30 or 40, but a few hundred of these things. So I made an event that there are costs. I don't remember what they are, but I think less than an actual building of an IC. But again, you could cheat and keep firing the event over and over and over and over and over, but this is not meant for cheating. But you fire it just once. So you get an IC, a cheap IC in a place where, I figured I looked up and they already had a Mercedes factory or whatever, but just expanded production. It's like, okay, well, Mercedes is going to expand its production to meet Army needs for whether it's these 3-axle or more standard 4-axle staff cars are going to expand production. And I also, for the standard HQs, the ones where you go, detach and then, create HQs minorly, not a full movement point, but just a percentage of a movement point. Forget what it was, like a third of a movement point or something like that. So the standard HQ unit here, not the special ones. That doesn't affect the special ones, just affects the standard one. Will move a little faster, just generically. So that's sort of cheaper. So it's again not a huge. You get not even full motorization or anything. Like you would find on a motorized HQ here, because we can see here. It's the way this thing is because of this movement. It does it, but max speed 6. What is one of these max speeds? Max speed. Well, it's the same, I guess. Okay. But I guess it is the same. But slightly faster, and an IC. But there is a cost to this that's there. And so I looked at that as a realistic what if Mercedes expand its production of staff cars. And I put that into the game. And so this is what I've done with a lot of events, sort of organically and not necessarily methodically planned out, that you get stuff sometimes for the less cost, because sometimes it's, captured weapons. So, and they form divisions with capture or units, not, like the Schutzmannschaft. A bunch of Schutzmannschaft events, which are sort of paramilitary police type units, meaning guys armed with rifles and machine guns, but not artillery and anti-tank guns. And so they're, I think they're fascist militia or something like that. And they're all over the Eastern Front areas, they're units, and they happen cheaper than building a militia unit. Why? Because they were armed primarily with captured Soviet equipment, rifles, machine guns, like I was saying. And so, and now a lot of them start with manpower less than full. You get like half manpower, a quarter manpower, because the battalions were under strength. But those are the starting element is free manpower, because it's, again, local volunteers. Now, a lot of these people end up, as everything is collapsing, getting transferred into some Waffen-SS Eastern Front unit that then goes into battle and dies 3 hours later. But they're sort of internal security troops. So you get them not for free, like I'm saying, but you get them super cheap or nearly free, and then you can use your own manpower if you want to, because you could also turn off reinforcing if you want to keep them at weaker things. But it's sort of deals with the manpower situation of rear area stuff. And so I give, and I don't know exactly what the cost, but it's either free or minimal for these militia units. And if you can then take these militia units and turn them into, SS infantry units by sending them back through the production queue and getting them out on the other side. Did I save this? I want to save this here, because we're going to come back and restart. I'm done with this. Thank you, Arno. And so the zero sum, should Hearts of Iron be a zero sum game, meaning if you're going to put a Panzer division on the map, should it cost equally to building a Panzer division through the production queue? Should adding an IC on the map cost the same amount of adding an IC this way? Hey, Beam Slam. Hope you don't have Paulus. Actually, Paulus is heading north. Where is Paulus? No, not there. He's around here somewhere. Army Group Nord, Von Klug. Yeah, there's Paulus. He's in Army Group North. There he is, right there. Trying to not have Paulus get trapped down here. Paulus, I don't think he was a bad commander. I'm not saying he was some great commander or anything like that. So don't start quoting problems to me of him. But I think the failure of Stalingrad wasn't his fault. I think there's a lot of other faults going on for Stalingrad's failure. Hey, Yog Dog. Well, we're pushing in, going pretty good. Caucasus. Just talking mod design and game design here. My thoughts on it. So I look at a game like this, that I want to deal with realistic, and I keep saying this, what ifs. And so I add, and we're dealing with the problem that Oh My God went in and gave a lot of costs to upgrading divisions. One of them was taking a early war armored division, like the 1st Armored Division, don't know where it is here. And so you have that, let's say like the 1st Armored Division or something, you have or the 3rd or the 4th, or it doesn't matter, but you have it, and it's originally out here with 2 battalions of light tanks. And so there's an event, or had been an event, to reorganize it that had super low costs, and you would get back a division, partially formed, partially going through. And I probably, there's probably more cost because it was going through the production queue, but whatever. And you're getting back a division with medium armor. But as even the notes for it said, the reorganization was taking away one of the panzer regiments and reorganizing the division, basically going from a really more of a battalion here, though this is really more of a regiment here. A battalion, adding more motorized infantry and reducing the amount of panzers. And I'm sure I got some of the details wrong in what I posted, but doing that, okay, so there's a cost, very little cost there. So you're actually losing, and they're probably upgrading some of the tanks too, but losing a panzer regiment. And then there was costs taking a infantry division, adding that panzer regiment from the other division, and motorizing the rest. Creating another panzer division, reorganizing it. And it's different. It's different reorganization than simply just adding a panzer regiment, because you're actually reducing infantry regiments, probably sending off an infantry regiment to serve in some other division, or at least its manpower, and getting rid of a division or regiment. And so this is a reorganization. It is not, and should you be able to do this endlessly? No, because, for little or no cost. There's a limited amount of what you should be able to do with these type of things. But you should be able to do some of these upgrades for, I think the problem is that historical divisions are measured by percentages. Absolutely, there's definitely... Yeah, I don't know, it's like flying things with feathers. Yeah, OMG, oh my god. So, what are your guys' thoughts on it on chat, or you can post? Let's see. I got to go soon. Sure, no problem, Exurgent. So, what are your thoughts? Are you probably mostly in agreement with me about upgrading divisions and whatnot, as well as event given ICs? How much is this unbalancing the game too much? Toothache. Ambisol works really well. Get Ambisol if you haven't. You can just put it right on your tooth or gum right there, and it will deaden it. Won't solve any problems. Not giving you a dentistry of how to solve the problem, but until you get a dentist looking at it, if you can get wherever you are, it's called Ambisol. It's sort of a topical anesthetic, or whatever, make you don't feel pain. It's a question like you as a philosophy. Yeah. So just saying, it really does work. So I don't know where you are and if they have that in your local drugstores, or chemists, as they say in Britain, or wherever. But that is a good thing, and it works very fast. And it may very well be a lidocaine type product. I don't know. It's just the particular one. Hello, Kodiak. How you doing? So I don't know. That's sort of my design philosophy on adding stuff. And yes, it unbalances. Yeah, that's very true, Exergent, limiting what you want to do. But see, I'm looking at it as a game designer. And because you don't have to take any of the upgrade events. You don't have to do that. There should be options to go, nope, don't want them, nope, don't want them. And so that isn't necessarily limiting what you want to do, because this is different than like the IC cap. This is event-based bonuses. They may have costs to them, but event-based bonuses to a particular nation, particularly Germany. And Mr. Gamer, just gamer. To the game, and I don't know where the line should be. Should it just be, you don't want to you give chess, one side several extra pieces or takes pieces away, unless you're trying to handicap yourself or something, take pieces away from a player. This isn't meant to be a game that is balanced, as in fair, allies versus axis. Is it fair? No, it's, as I look at it, again, is it historically plausible? Because we've already gone into the what ifs of this whole thing. The whole point of H is you can play the war the way in which I want. Yes, yes. Yeah, that's, yeah, you're not forced. Now, see, that, and what your statement to a point, Exergent, is what a lot of people say is why they liked Hearts of Iron 4 much better than Hearts of Iron 3. Well, hey, it's Germany. I can ally with Britain, and we can go beat up on those dirty Frenchmen. They like that better. Because you can bring the Kaiser back and then or you can have the fascists take over in Britain, and you can have a German British alliance to beat up on the damn, Romance language peoples, the French, the Italians, the Spaniards, and yay. Well, see, that's going too far. But if you're going strategy, well, I want to do a Mediterranean first strategy before having to go into the Soviet Union, then I'm with you 100% because that's what I'm playing. So it's, it's not like, I am not interested in what if Germany decided just to conquer Italy because Italy's pathetic and is not helpful in the war? Well, that's not a game I'm interested in. And so this is what I'm trying to get from people is, where do you draw these lines? And what do you guys think? Events are flavor. Yeah, the events are flavor. Panzer Heinz is better. Who knows about this? Yeah, Panzer Heinz is good. Yeah, I get your point, but everyone is different. Yeah, and this is the type of game there should be no line. Well, I think there should be some levels of lines. And this is what I sort of, as a modern developer, try to struggle with. I don't want to make Germany overpowered beyond what I think they could have been in World War II. But we can look at, and a lot of this goes back, and I know it is self-serving justification and self-serving aggrandizement, but I have to go back to Albert Speer's memoirs. Memoirs are, some are more historically correct than others, but because some people make diaries through their life and then go back and look at those diaries and then go look up a lot of historical facts and archives and then write their memoirs based upon that. Other people just sit in a room and think about the past and write it up. I don't know when Speer was writing a lot of his memoirs in prison how much archival material, if any, he had access to. And I don't know how much. But I have to go back to Speer's book, and he talks a lot about the conflicts within Germany and production and the Speer miracle. Now, I've very much over time come to the idea that Speer wasn't some genius, but Speer was just able to rationalize the system. The system that was in Germany already, make it better organized, and he had the power, being close to Hitler, to force many of his positions through the obstructionism within the system. And so there's this Speer production miracle. Well, I look at it, instead of trying to do a Speer production miracle in 36, 37, 38, but well, what if you just do things a little better? 20% better. Something, a realistic number or something. And then how would the war play out? So you'll have more of this or more of that. Is your historically plausible? Yes, but the question you need to ask yourself regarding balance is, do you want to make a game more difficult or easier to play? I personally want more difficult. Yes, the difficulty. What I am hoping to do, and we'll see how it works out just in practical sense, of playing a campaign once I get all of current TRE and the other sort of mods functioning, not like done, but just the next big batch. I want to play a multiplayer game. And so the difficulty will be based mostly on the skill of the players. See, I have played on harder difficulty levels, but I'm not looking for, do I have a good enough challenge in invading the Soviet Union? And should we give either more production to the Soviets so they have more tank divisions, or should I give bonuses to the Soviet armed forces to make them stronger? I don't like that kind. I will play those sometimes, and I have, and I'll probably play them in the future. But those are not the difficulties I like, and those are what the difficulties are in Hearts of Iron. Is that you're either hindering your side or you're buffing the other side. So I don't like those. I like the difficulties based upon skill of the opponent difficulties, and so I'm hoping a human player one will be the difficulty challenge. No historical division added. You should be in charge of the amount of it would take to build the production window. Great events should just be charged supplies and resources. Okay, Vincent, that's sort of, yeah. And I actually like Oh My God's system for when he's putting entirely new units onto the map. It's actually a good system. Okay, I'm not complaining about new units. I'm complaining particularly here about upgrading units or increasing production facilities. As a mod, it was by definition fit in those lines. I guess I'm just saying that if an event fires and costs me too much for a unit, I don't want it. Yeah, mainly because I already build a large enough army. Absolutely exurgent. Thank you, Arna. You consider multiplayer where two people both play as Germany against other people. In theory, I would. I don't know. Okay. Again, like I say, I want to make a grand series. I wish I would have started it a year ago or something, but it just 10.3.3 was just a god awful mess of instability. Just 10.3 something. Just we have a lot more stability. It's not perfect. I don't know how stable it is. My understanding, again, I've only played this briefly with one other person, just as testing things out. The more players you stick onto a game like this, the more unstable it becomes. Okay, that's my understanding. So I'm hoping 6 players will not be too unstable. So that would be, as I see it, Germany, Italy, Japan versus Britain, Soviet Union, America as human players. All the rest would be AI. I would love to have a Hungarian player and a Romanian player and 2 German players, one to sort of manage the Eastern Front and the other to manage the rest or something like that. And the U.S. player, again, could be 2, one to manage the United States, in the greater European theater, and the other to manage the U.S. versus Japan. Yeah, but I think 12, 14 people were overdoing it. And I think it's just too much of a bonus to have two humans playing against the AI, or primarily the AI, the idea of two humans playing Germany, but a human Britain and a human Soviet Union kind of thing would be overwhelming, I think. Well, I also think the time these effects last are a bit ridiculous. Yeah, just to tell you, some of the stuff, and maybe I shouldn't have, some of the events, but some of them I know I should, like some of the Becker upgrade events where Major Becker, or whatever his rank was dealing with the 227th Infantry Division going, oh, here's tanks for you because I found them in this French warehouse. Oh, here's some trucks that are French Army trucks. Now you're motorized. Oh, here's some tank destroyers that I took some really crappy French tanks and had some steel sent out from steel armor, just plate sent out, and we welded together, tank destroyers and mounted our already existing anti-tank guns that we had in the division. Instead of towing them behind a truck, we now mounted it on this tank. So some of that should be basically free. A lot of the others, I've reduced either the number of days or the IC costs. So for the upgrade stuff. And so I've reduced a lot of it. And some of the original developers put nice, like I was just saying, little handy notes that say, the 4th Panzer, and I think it's the 4th because I was just looking at it earlier before starting the stream here. The 4th Panzer Division was reorganized by removing one of the Panzer regiments. And I know that when they did that, they went like from 2 infantry battalions to 3 or is it 4? I forget some of the details. But they added more infantry battalions and they removed a Panzer regiment. But I think they took, I think they removed one Panzer regiment, but gave the one Panzer regiment remaining in more Panzers, an additional battalion. So going like from 4 to 3 battalions and then moving the remainder of the regiment over. So it's not, and they may have gotten some newer tanks too. So you're getting some newer stuff, blah, blah, blah. But just reorganizing it. And then I think it was the 14th Infantry Division. No, it's some other. I think it's some other infantry. I don't know. Some infantry division gets the Panzer regiment that's moved over to and reorganized into Panzer Division organization, which means fewer infantry regiments, and it's getting some of the personnel from some of the Panzer personnel from the other unit. Probably some new personnel shifted it into trained Panzer tankers. Probably sending out so it's a remix of stuff. And yeah, they probably sent out new trucks to the infantry division. I say probably because I do know the Germans were confiscating from Germany trucks for the military. They were often would be calling requisitioning. So they had civilian trucks that may be the same model or similar models that are already used in the Army, and they're going, oh, hey, yeah, this delivery company trucking, yeah, we're taking half your trucks. And we're going to paint them field gray, and they're going to belong to this other division. I know that happened. I also know that sometimes it's military equipment that they're capturing, and sometimes it's purely civilian equipment that they're just taking, including like city buses. Oh yeah, because you'll find French city buses pictured in the Soviet Union that some German division is using. They have a divisional symbol, I don't know, like the 43rd Infantry Division or something painted on the fender that they captured in France, and they took, used them as, whether, it's still an infantry division, but maybe using them as, wounded evacuation, sort of hospital evacuation buses or whatever it is, personnel transport around in the Eastern Front, a bus. I do know from reading, Germans, if you weren't, Goering or somebody super high, were not allowing personnel to just do a lot of plundering of things for personal uses. I remember reading about a German officer stationed in Paris briefly for a while, after taking it. And the owner actually sort of said, yeah, you can stay at my place, but he was like living in Switzerland, I think, or somewhere. You stay in my home. And he had a really nice, reasonably nice car in there. And the guy and some of his buddies decide to borrow the car and drive it back to Germany for a vacation, show it off, and then drive it back. But they talk about being very careful with it and bringing it back and put it in the garage. So they don't steal it. I mean, it's just literally borrowing it. And, it's sort of being, well, are we going to get in trouble for this? No, I don't think. He said we can use his apartment. He didn't say anything about the car. And they just literally borrow the car to drive back to Germany for, a few days and whatnot, and then he comes back, and so they don't steal the car. But I know that they were requisitioning, shall we say, stealing civilian cars, civilian trucks, civilian buses. I do not know the scale of it, meaning, did they plunder all of the buses in France? I don't think so. Did they plunder, because now eventually, they get on such fuel rationing, city buses stop running, taxis stop running. Or mostly, and maybe not entirely, but a lot of them stop running. It depends on what stage in the war and how short the fuel is. So they're definitely requisitioning French vehicles, but they're also requisitioning German, corporate-owned or whatever vehicle. Now, I don't know what the scale is of that, because I know a lot of Gauleiters protected their GAUs and the companies within their GAUs. But I also know that there was some level of, we need these trucks for the army. And they took them. Is that most of the trucks? Some of the trucks? A few of the trucks? I don't have good records on that. So motorization of some of these units, don't know. How many people do you have? How many people? Are we talking about the finches? How many he has? I don't know. Arno got some finches, and he's now a happy bird owner. So so obviously Germany didn't motorize most of their army. Most of their army was horse-drawn. So at what level? And this is hard for me as a, what do I, how do we do this? Is it all new trucks from factories? So motorizing an infantry division should cost, I don't know, half as much as a new motorized infantry division, because you already have all the rifles and the machine guns and the artillery pieces. You're just adding the trucks and the Kubelwagons. Or is motorizing a particular infantry division free because it's used already existing trucks that were going to be idled anyways because they didn't have the gas, the civilians didn't have the gas for them. Civilian companies and rationing, and maybe, a local delivery company. Well, we're not going to have the new tires. Civilians are not going to have new tires for those trucks. And the civilian company, you're only going to get fuel to run half of those trucks for, delivery bakery bread from the sort of factory bakery in town to all the little selling points there. So you're gonna have to make do with half the number of delivery trucks, and we're gonna take those trucks into the army. Now those trucks into the army may not be put onto the front lines. They may be used by the Luftwaffe to move supplies from the railways to the air bases, the bombs or the fuel or, whatever, motorization in and around the army. But that's just motorization levels going up, which frees up trucks that would have to be new production to do that a little more off-road trucks or whatever instead of city trucks that we can send to the front. So I don't know. I'm trying to strike a balance between the differing viewpoints, and so that's just, I guess, my getting this off my chest, and I'm probably getting some of the details in the upgrading and whatnot wrong. But I don't know. Well, I guess this is it for upgrade talk. And so we're going to end the episode, not the live stream, but next episode we will be back to playing more East Front Conquest. So thanks, everyone. Again, those of you watching this later, please post your comments. And maybe I'm all wrong, and tell me why. And I'll listen. Doesn't mean I'll agree, but I'll listen to tell me, why I'm all wrong. Because I know I'm not right on everything. So, but love to hear your feedback. See you next time for even more Hearts of Iron.